You're watching Auto News Now. I'm Kristen Strakalitis. On today's episode, Jamie Butters, host of the Daily Drive podcast, sat down with automotive news reporter Richard Truitt. They talked about how very high mileage used cars have become a growth market for franchise dealers.
Richard Truitt, welcome to Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me.
You led a package of stories in this week's issue of Automotive News about very used cars, those with well over 100,000 miles on the odometer, that are now being offered even at franchise dealerships. How did you get turned on to this story?
You know, part of it is because I've been in the market myself for a used car. My wife started working at home during the whole COVID thing, and her lease expired, and we decided we weren't going to spend a fortune to have a car sitting in the driveway. So we started looking at used cars, and we found cars with incredible mileages for a lot of money. And it sort of I just wanted to start looking into that and then see what was going on with all these older used cars and why they were so expensive. And then the chip shortage happened and they got even more expensive. So I just have kind of been following the whole saga of it.
Yeah, they've gotten more expensive and they've gotten onto lots where they didn't used to typically be sold. So that's an interesting change. And of course, here in the news business, we like change. We like to acknowledge it, recognize it. So you found this, seems like a really solid growth area for a lot of dealerships, especially while inventories are so tight. And maybe it'll last longer term, but it isn't a no-brainer. You found some cases where some dealers haven't been able to move an otherwise, seemingly attractive high mileage vehicle.
Yeah, here's one thing I learned is that dealers have to be really selective with the vehicles that they choose to put through the reconditioning process, because it's going to cost them some money to recondition an older vehicle with high miles. And so I'm finding that SUVs are, because they're in such demand new, that used ones are also, high mile ones are more likely to be reconditioned. But what's really important is the history, the Carfax of it. Scott Fredericks from Carfax told me, I asked them, what are the things that people look at on the report? And he said, number one by a country mile is accident history. People are not going to buy anything with an accident. But if it's been maintained well and it's, like a one owner car and it's got a full service history, then I think dealers are taking a closer look at that. Because there's kind of a sweet spot in the market of, say, between $5,000 and $10,000, where I've learned that people are just paying cash. And that's not typically how used cars were sold at dealerships.
How's it different? How was it before?
Well, I think that car dealers wanted to have off-lease used cars with low miles, maybe a 5 or 6 year old car at the most. But as cars age, banks are less apt to lend money on it because they don't want. One of the persons I interviewed for the story told me that banks don't want to lend, put people in risky situations where if a car breaks down and someone has to make a car payment and a repair payment, they're not going to be able to make both, and they're probably going to fix the car rather than pay the loan. So that's one reason why banks don't typically finance those kinds of cars. So I think that with high mile cars, they're priced less and more affordable for people who can maybe just pay cash.
So if they can scrape it together $5,000 instead of making a down payment and then having to make monthly payments, they just buy an older car and take their chances.
They used to be called a beater with a heater, but now I think they are a little bit nicer. We have reported, Jamie, ad nauseum, as you know, about the price of cars increasing year after year. But one thing maybe we haven't connected the dots so well, and I guess I better be careful here because you might assign me another story, is that cars are lasting longer, right? Maybe part of that price increase is because of all the technological changes and better paints and things that are enabling cars to last well past 100,000 miles.
That's right. They add a lot of gadgets, but they also add a lot of improvements that make them last longer. I wrote a column that kind of packaged with this or coincided with this, about how much better vehicles have become over the decades that guys like us have been covering the industry. But talk oily to me. What are the specific technological improvements that have really allowed autos to reliably run for 200,000 miles or more?
That's the question I asked for one of our stories. I wanted to know specifically what's been done to make cars last longer. And rust protection is a big factor. Automakers have learned to design bodies that don't trap moisture. Companies like PPG and DuPont have made paints that are harder and stronger and don't chip as much. Suppliers like ZF build transmissions that are designed to last the life of the vehicle, however long that may be. Companies like Federal Mogul build components for the engine that are basically don't wear out. Piston rings with diamond coating on them and main bearings with special coatings that just essentially don't wear, not like they used to.
That's incredible. The sealing systems and just everything, they're so much more precise than they once were.
Thanks for tuning in. Listen now to Jamie's full interview on the Daily Drive podcast, available on all podcasting platforms. Have a great day.